Ladies, gentlemen, and young ladies, good evening, everyone. You are once again welcome here on the platform for raising awareness. At the one of the international news, Russia has just given a warning to NATO. It's a kind of last warning, and the warning is given by the very, very rigorous Dimitri Medvedev. Dimitri Medvedev, who is the vice president of the Russian Security Council. Be careful, it is a former president of the Republic of Russian Federation. He was prime minister today. He is the vice president of the Russian Security Council. So this warning that Russia has just given is a warning compared to the last decision that Westerners had to take. In particular, I want to talk about the agreement of the famous agreement that was signed between the Poland and Ukraine. For those who follow me regularly, it was the day before yesterday that we were talking about this agreement, this famous agreement that the Ukrainian president signed with the Polish president. In this agreement, Ukraine offered Poland to send its soldiers, and that these soldiers come to learn how to cut down the Russian drones over the territory Ukrainian. We said when the agreement was proposed, we said that this was NATO entering directly in conflict with Russia. I said it here. There you go. As if all that wasn't enough. Yesterday, I made a video conferencing inside which I told you that Poland had just provoked the Russia. And in this video conference, what is it? What did we say? It's the president, Polish, who signed a presidential resolution that authorizes, which gives the date of the departure of the troops, what do you call it? Polish for Ukraine. So in this resolution presidential, he first ordered to what NATO forces can come to its territory, but also and especially he took another act for give the date September 18th as being the date of the soldiers' departure Polish for Ukraine to go learn how to shoot down Russian drones. And I told you to this effect that it was the date the war began between Russia and NATO. So they are following the little one good way. The decree is signed, the date is given, they will go on the 18th September in Ukraine to shoot down the Russian drones over Ukraine. And this is how Russia comes out of its silence regarding this aspect. So, as part of this video conferencing is this warning that we are going to see, this warning from the Security Council Russian. But before we continue, I would like to humbly ask to share this video conference. It must be shared with maximum in all possible groups. Above all, put a lot of likes and always remember to leave your different opinions in the comments. So, this is a proposed red line. It is a red line set by Medvedev. This direct warning from Moscow is a red line. Dimitri Medvedev, former president and vice president of the Security Council Russian, he claimed that any attempt NATO to shoot down Russian drones over Ukraine would be considered as a direct involvement in the war. Any attempt NATO to shoot down Russian drones over Ukraine will be considered as a direct involvement in the war. Who are the ones who will bring down the Russian drones over Ukraine? These are the Polish soldiers. And the argument they came up with is that they leave to learn how to slaughter Russian drones. As they are also targeted by the Russian drones, they go in training. So Poland did it in the form of a bilateral agreement between Kiev and the Poland with the aim of training soldiers Polish. However, in reality, these soldiers, Poles, are NATO soldiers because Poland is a member of NATO. So their malice that they wanted use, it didn't work and it can't work. Russia has everything further discovered if Polish soldiers are there and who say that their role is to shoot down Russian drones over Ukraine, is that they are already involved in the conflict. It is those that NATO has always had fear. NATO always said, no, we do not want to be directly involved in the conflict. Is that this is what NATO is doing realize. So it is a message that is aimed above all Washington and Brussels, the capitals, NATO and NATO capitals. This message clearly means if you touch our drones, you enter the conflict. We don't need to go into the contours. You touch our drones above Ukraine, you enter the conflict. And the consequences, it is you who know. So this is also a Russian strategy of verbal deterrence, certainly. We know that Moscow has been using the beginning of the war, a rhetoric of graduated threat to prevent time from cross certain thresholds. Yes. Well, we can say then that it is one of the threats graduated that NATO had to, how we are going to say that Russia is in the process to use. Certainly it is of such a threat. Okay, but after the weapons heavy long range missiles, it is now the question of drones, which becomes a symbolic red line. We'll see if it's just for data or is it Russia will react squarely. But what remains clear, according to the law international, if these Polish soldiers arrive and then start to shoot down Russian drones, that's what they do, part of the conflict. And so each threshold crossed calls for an ultimatum. Russia wants to hit better if the line is ignored. So what are the implications for NATO and the conflict in Ukraine? This warning, it must be said that the West is in a dilemma. Act or retreat. NATO wants to protect Ukraine against massive strikes, Russian drones. But risk a direct confrontation with Moscow is a step that many fear. They don't want to risk a confrontation with Moscow. And so the Allies find themselves facing a choice. Accept an involvement, indirect, or maintain a line of support, limited. Here is the question that arises. If time drags, she enters in the war. If she retreats, she admits his fear of Russia. So where are we going? Are we going towards a total conflagration, a global conflagration? This threat of Dimitri Medvedev confirms that Russia considers any NATO action as Ukraine as an attack on Russia herself. That's what it means. Any action NATO military in Ukraine is considered an attack on the Russia itself, and that is what opens the risk of military escalation uncontrollable, strike, retaliation, extension of the conflict in Eastern Europe, threats, nuclear weapons brandished, and so on. So this posture reflects Russian will to hold the strategic initiative and force the time to stay on the defensive. Whatever happens, we wonder, will NATO listen? Medvedev's warning places NATO faced with a historic choice. Accept the humiliation of limited support or take the risk of a confrontation direct with Moscow. What remains clear, it is Moscow that continues to say to dictate the tempo. And so ladies, young ladies and gentlemen, that was the front page of the news. Please share it with Maximum. I'll get back to you later with new information. It was the voice of your humble servant Samurai.